Recently, a piece of news made headlines across various Canadian media outlets, revealing that the fashion tycoon Peter Nygard has been found guilty of 4 counts of sexual assault but was acquitted by jury on a 5th count and a charge of forcible confinement. He will potentially face up to a decade or more in jail. Nygard's sentencing hearing is set for this upcoming May. I wonder what everyone's thoughts are after seeing the headline. Personally, the first thing that came to mind was that I didn't know we had a fashion tycoon in Canada. So I decided to do some research online and found out that this man is actually far from ordinary. At one point, he had a net worth of $900 million and made it to the top 100 richest Canadians several times. However, what truly made him notorious in the industry was his decades-long reputation as a notorious womanizer/harasser and his persistent sycophantic behavior. From Princess Diana to newly emerging young models, almost any woman who appeared by his side had reportedly been harassed by him, overtly or covertly. With his influential connections, he even managed to manipulate the president of Bahamas. Although he engages in esoteric practices such as a combination of electronic praying beads and virtual incense burning rituals, there is a lesser-known aspect about him. He is actually a devoted follower of science-based immortality. His ventures included leveraging cutting-edge laboratories and employing techniques such as embryonic stem cell transplants, trying out various medical practices that are still in the experimental stage, including the use of young girls' fetuses to rejuvenate himself, even at the cost of sacrificing his own flesh and blood, all in pursuit of eternal youth. Unlike Brian Johnson, who is putting himself out there to be the subject of his own anti-aging experiment and sharing data with the world, Nygard is exploiting other people for his own benefit and putting them at risk. If he were to time travel back to the Ming Dynasty with a time machine, he'd fit right in as the Ming emperor who used palace maids and concubines' period blood to concoct the elixirs of immortality. His fate carries a sense of inevitability akin to the struggles of heirs in historical dramas, faced with such debauched and unyielding patriarch. His numerous legitimate and illegitimate children, as well as women and employees whom he had exploited and mistreated, united to bring his reputation down and ruin the remainder of his lifespan. It's like Nygard asked this guy for immortality, got rejected, and received jail sentence as a result. So how did Peter become a fashion tycoon? And what unethical deeds did he commit over the years in pursuit of longevity? Let's delve into the absurd and crazed world of this fashion tycoon and his dream of eternal youth. Peter Nygard was born in 1941 in Finland. According to Peter's memoir, his childhood memories can be summed up in one word: cold. This coldness wasn't just physical, but economic and psychological as well. Because when Peter was born, Finland was in a war with Soviet Union, and by the time he started school, they were having differences with Germany. In such a tumultuous environment, Peter's family farm on the outskirts often faced water and electricity shortages, leaving both humans and livestock in uncertainty. With no transportation, they had to trudge to school in temperatures dropping to minus 20 or 30 degrees Celsius, wrapping worn-out sports rackets around their shoes to avoid sinking into thick snow. Everyone endured this until Peter turned 11, when his parents couldn't tolerate the cold conditions anymore and decided to move to warmer places. Thus, the family moved to Canada. Although it's just as cold, it offered a warmer prospect for their future. Peter not only successfully completed high school but also entered University of North Dakota to study business. After graduation, he ventured alone into the capital of Manitoba Province, Winnipeg, and then joined the largest department store as a salesperson. Peter was quick-witted, eloquent, and handsome. Not only did he bring sales to the top, but he also attracted a huge number of fans and customers who would spend money at his recommendation. Just as he was ready to soar to the new heights of his career, he hit the first ceiling. He wanted the position of sales manager at the department store, which he thought was within easy reach. However, he ended up being given to someone with lower performance and weaker ability but more seniority. In a fit of anger, Peter resigned. With the support of family and friends, he gathered 8,000 Canadian dollars and registered a clothing company in 1967 called Nygard International. Initially, he was subcontracting some sportswear, but later he hired designers and started his own brand. The main customers were young professional women under 35. However, the investment in the small workshop was very limited, and hiring top models on the runway was out of the question. Before the era of internet marketing, advertising primarily relied on fashion magazines. But Peter couldn't afford these, so he resorted to the most primitive methods. He printed out flyers and distributed them on the streets. He even hired people to go door-to-door marketing. However, looking at some of the small ads he placed back then, you could tell this guy had some skills. First of all the clothes from his brand were basic styles. Even after 40 years, they still wouldn't look outdated. The clothing itself was made of solid material of excellent quality, machine washable and tumble dryable, and can withstand all kinds of rough handling. Yet the prices were very affordable for those young girls who had just entered the workforce with low salaries. Buying a few classic pieces for mix and match meant that they could sit in the office during the day and go clubbing after work without breaking the bank every month. Contrary to luxury brands like Chanel and Dior, then Peter's brand focuses on affordability while not losing style. Luckily, he developed several very popular items, such as jeans that claimed to visually slim down a girl by 10 kilograms. After these jeans were discontinued, they were being resold for over $100 and they were still a hard find. At that time, a pair of such jeans in Peter's shop was the most affordable on the market, and he even provided free repair services. With such service and the rising female employment rate, his clothing sales soared, and he later launched a series of sub-brands including children's wear, menswear, and home furnishings. At its peak, 80% of the fashion industry in Manitoba was under his empire, achieving the feat of the bun shop surpassing Michelin-starred restaurants. What did he do next? He put his own photo as the advertising poster on every floor, showing off his wealth and status. Moreover, whether due to an unwavering confidence in his own looks or sheer vanity, he not only plastered his photos all over billboards along the highways, but also splurged on renting out these screens on Times Square. From coast to coast, he forcibly made everyone experience the fear instilled by his aging face. However, Peter's personal life did not live up to his business reputation. His spiritual pursuits were primarily sexual desires. In the 1970s, Peter married a tall, blonde, blue-eyed model who he believed would be his dream woman. Unfortunately, the dream lasted less than 2 years, ending in divorce after they had a daughter. From then on, he fully embraced the life of a playboy. He admitted to once ardently pursuing Princess Diana shortly after her divorce, showering hotel lobbies with flowers only to be met with rejection. Then he set his sights on Anna Nicole Smith, a former Playboy model, attempting to buy her freedom with a hefty sum, only for her to marry an oil tycoon 63 years her senior. It was another lesson in the futility of his efforts. Perhaps in the eyes of these celebrities, he was just a wealthy but bland pet. However, Peter's charm seemed to work exceptionally well on girls coming from less privileged backgrounds. For decades, regardless of the occasion, you can always see groups of young girls surrounding him, and he would affectionately call these girls his girlfriends. He was essentially adopting the demeanor of an emperor with a rare palace. As for the exact numbers of these companions, he doesn't even know. However, he legally acknowledged 10 children from 8 different women. His eldest daughter is nearly 50, while his youngest son is only 16. To accommodate his numerous wives and children, Peter tirelessly began buying properties around the world, not only in North America and Europe, but also in Asia, including in Thailand and Hong Kong. Each house had one or more concubines, eagerly awaiting the emperor's favor. There's a famous anecdote involving veteran actor Sean Connery, who once competed with Peter over a property, driving the price up 6-fold, much to the dismay of their bank accounts. The person selling the property almost had a heart attack. In the end, Peter, with his money superpower, managed to secure the property, leaving Bond in awe, which is why he always likes to brag about being the man who defeated James Bond. However, all these houses were merely his palaces. His true rear palace was located on a small island in the Bahamas. In the mid-1980s, after buying this island along with 400-year-old house, Peter embarked on over a decade of expansion and renovation. Those who visited him there would usually sum it up in this line: ostentatious and extravagant, a stark contrast to the minimalist style of his clothing line. He filled the small islands with decorations sourced from all over the world, whether it's South American indigenous totems, Egyptian pyramid mimicry, or African stone-carved lions, all perfectly meeting the criteria of being large, shiny, and eye-catching. It's mind-blowing how he managed to find so much junk posing as art collectibles. If it's just tacky, that would be a different thing. But what's baffling is his complete lack of self-control. For instance, he once shipped 40 of his sports cars to the island, and because the dock was not big enough to accommodate them, they have to be disassembled and reassembled on the island. And speaking of the island's size, you could practically ride a senior citizen scooter around it without needing to recharge. They even purchased several heavy-duty stone crushers and spent over half a year painstakingly pulverizing stones to spread the powder on the beach. So basically, they spread sand on sand. It's as pointless as tiling the Great Wall. The reason he brought his girls to the Bahamas was that the legal age for consensual activities is only 16 here. As a Caribbean nation where corruption is rife, with police and government closely intertwined, the law itself has unparalleled flexibility for super-rich individuals like Peter. This flexibility is evident in the frequent visits of young girls to the island, some of whom are barely in their teens. However, in the eyes of the police, they are all considered adults. Many of these girls come from lower to middle income family neighborhoods. Peter, under the guise of recruiting models for his fashion company, distributed flyers everywhere, even targeting high schools to attract young girls who want to become rich and famous. Then he would use that as an excuse to bring them to the island. Of course, finding models would just be a facade. The real purpose is to find bedmates. And most of the time, he doesn't even need to be personally involved. The owners of nearby bars and nightclubs will actively search for pretty girls and send them to the island on speedboats for his pleasure. Every weekend, Peter will hold so-called love parties at his mansion. Just by hearing the name, you can guess what goes on inside. It's sickening to think that underage girls sharing a bed with a 70-year-old, but he doesn't see himself as one of those rich old men. In fact, he doesn't even consider himself old. In his dictionary, the word old simply doesn't exist. His series of jaw-dropping actions in this regard have elevated him from being just another lecherous old man to downright haywire. Let's go back over a decade ago to a public interview with Peter facing a CNN reporter. He confidently declared his plan to live to at least 120, with 150 being a feasible goal, and his secret weapon, a cutting-edge technology called embryonic stem cell transplant. Research on embryonic stem cells actually began in 1981 after successfully deriving these stem cells from early mouse embryos, but detailed research on deriving embryonic stem cells from human embryos didn't happen until 1998. Since then, the overall field of stem cell has garnered significant attention, but much work still requires to be done. These embryonic stem cells can contribute to all parts of the embryo, and scientists theorize that they can also regenerate all parts of the human body, from organs needed for cancer surgery to fixing receding hairline, wrinkles, etc. Essentially, just hit the factory reset button. That's why Peter is so confident in his ability to reverse aging. To him, his body is like a computer. He can upgrade it, he can revert it, and then he can reset it. Graphics card burn out? Replace it. CPU not good enough? Upgrade it. Monitor sucks. Get a new monitor. However, as promising as this technology sounds, the reality of its implementation is far from the fairy tale-like promise of eternal youth. Firstly, embryonic stem cells used in this technology mainly come from fetuses, with the most pluripotent embryonic stem cells only being extracted from embryos and fertilized eggs. Do any of you remember a horror movie that was popular over a decade ago called Three Extremes Dumplings? In it, a wealthy woman rejuvenates herself by eating dumplings made from aborted fetuses, fighting against all odds. It's like the movie has come to life, but Peter is even more twisted than a woman. The wealthy woman in the video used other people's fetuses, but Peter sometimes used his own. The reason is that stem cell transplant carries a risk of rejection. Although the risk is small, Peter wants to do it on himself many times, so the risk accumulates. In severe cases, these rejections can even be life-threatening. In other words, if things don't go well, Peter could end up a dead fairy. So just like with the other organ transplants, the highest success rate comes from those who are genetically related to you. That's where Peter had an idea. He impregnated many of his girlfriends with his own offspring, then pressured them to abort babies, extracting embryonic stem cells from these embryos for his own use. And to ensure the quality and exclusivity of these raw materials, he is prone to choose young virgins. Once pregnant, these women were strictly monitored. As soon as the fetus was removed from the womb, the women were given some money and kicked off like trash. It's evident that such research challenged both the human boundaries and the medical ethics. Peter, a very wealthy individual, traveled across all the institutions in North America only to be politely turned down. They stated that this technology can only be used on animal embryos. Even if human ones were to be used, it can only be on fertilized ones. However, Peter didn't give up. Since he had money, he figured that he'd soon find somewhere with even lower research ethics standard. He turned his attention back to his rare palace in the Bahamas. Having ruled as a local tyrant there for many years, he knew how lax the regulations were. Surely enough, with his strong manipulation, the president of Bahamas personally signed a decree that cleared all legal obstacles to human embryonic stem cell research. Then he specially approved the establishment of large cryopreservation bank, allowing Peter to do as he pleased in this research. However, resources is one thing and technology is another. Peter traveled around the globe and extended olive branches to various institutions in Dubai, Russia, and China. In the end, he chose the senior scientist in BGI Group of Shenzhen to be his technical partner. According to its official website, BGI Group is committed to using genetic technology to benefit humanity, advancing life science research, and improve global medical standards. However, the boss of BGI, Wang Jian, also harbored the same obsession with eternal youth as Peter. In a CCTV program in 2015, he expressed his dream of enabling everyone to live to 100 years old. This made the two seem like kindred spirits, and they regretted not meeting earlier. Peter publicly claimed to have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in BGI, and he flew to China a few times a year to inspect the results. However, there are conflicting claims about the extent of support BGI provided to Peter's research on immortality. BGI stated that they only conducted some basic gene sequencing and extraction work, not involving the field of stem cells, nor did they use samples provided by Peter for laboratory cultivation. However, Peter himself claimed that the BGI group was a pioneer in this anti-aging field. Peter mentioned that they made significant progress in this area and bypassed animal testing to go straight to human testing, with Peter being subject number 1. He claimed to have undergone 6 embryonic stem cell transplants in over 3 years, successfully reverting his body from the 70s to the 50s, feeling twice as energetic, enjoying his meals, and can go up 7 flights of stairs at one time. However, the before and after comparison images he released suggest that he should consider paying his photo editor more money. Just look at the unchanged beer belly and receding hairline. Perhaps his mental health is better than before though. However, compared to other septuagenarians, Peter's physical condition was clearly not on par with the likes of Trump, Harry Ford, or Michael Douglas, who could still engage in moderate activities. When asked why he's so obsessed with longevity, Peter actually gave a straightforward answer. I don't think I'll go to heaven when I die. And I don't think heaven will be more comfortable than my current life, so obviously I want to live as long as possible. However, not everyone wished for his longevity, especially not his eldest daughter, Bianca, who is the heir of his commercial empire. Compared to her less accomplished siblings, Bianca was the most educated and reliable member of the family. After graduating in fashion design, she naturally joined the company and became her father's right-hand woman within a few years. The slim-fit jeans that could instantly make you look 10 kilograms lighter, which was a sensation at the time, were her brainchild. She then convinced Peter to establish a sub-brand called Slim, with the slogan, "All women can have a perfect figure without dieting." Under Bianca's leadership, Slim became the most profitable product line in Peter's commercial empire within a year. Such immense success positioned Bianca as the heir, akin to the sister of the Versace empire in their heyday. However, according to Peter's plan to live until 150 years old, Bianca would only ascend to power when she was a centenarian. Moreover, unlike his father, she didn't have access to other resources to hopefully prolong her life. This meant that when the time came for Bianca to take over, you wouldn't be certain who's still remaining on this planet. Even more fatal was the fact that she knew about the myriad of dirty deeds his father had done, each akin to a tickling time bomb that could blow the entire company apart at any moment, dragging him down with it. With Peter's nearly 60 years of operation in the company and his intricate networks of contacts, he was untouchable. Furthermore, his daily residence in an indulgent Bahamas, where even the president would give him leeway, made any thoughts Bianca might have of replacing him futile. It wasn't until 2018 that this heavily fortified fortress was finally the catalyst, a political upheaval in the Bahamas, forcing the corrupt and incompetent Prime Minister Perry Christie to resign. Meanwhile, a video about his premiere started circulating online, showing that he was living a good life in Las Vegas surrounded by beautiful women. And the wealthy old man beside him was none other than Peter, who had been reigning over Bahamas for years. The photo was taken in 2012, just after Perry's re-election, and there had always been rumors that Peter was the real power behind him. Soon after, many women from Bahamas came forward, exposing Peter's various misdeeds on the island, emphasizing that all of this had happened with the tacit approval and assistance of the local police, dragging teenage girls to impregnate them and then imprisoning them. It was something straight out of a slave society. Faced with surging public anger, the Bahamian police had no choice but to launch an investigation into Peter's criminal activities. A year later, they froze all of his assets on the island on charges of illegal construction and tax evasion. With no one to manage it and no one willing to take it over, this once hedonistic paradise turned into a heaven for mosquitoes and rats. Foreseeing the potential collapse of his empire, Peter ran back to Canada overnight. However, 3 women sued him for sexual assault the moment he stepped down from the airplane, initially asking for huge sums of money. This suddenly turned from civil lawsuit to criminal lawsuit, with the number of victims snowballing to 56, spanning over 40 years, with many being teenagers at the time. There were also 2 men among these victims, which were quite noticeable, so many started guessing whether Peter was bisexual. Later on, they admitted to be Peter's son, and here's the full story. When they just hit 14, Peter brought them to his Bahamas island and forced them to have their first time with 2 experienced escorts, in the name of becoming a man. The 2 boys were forced against their wills, which is why it constituted breaching of Canadian law. Additionally, they were underage for escorts. Their appearance among the victims further suggests that the mastermind behind this is likely their eldest sibling, Bianca, who holds significant financial power. A clear indication is that shortly after the litigation commenced, she, as the major stakeholder, demanded the board to reclaim all shares held by her father, citing his actions severely tarnished the company's image. Less than a month after the vote passed, Bianca, now with actual decision-making authority, formally applied for numerous bankruptcy protections. Subsequently, she swiftly liquidated assets, selling everything at a steep discount. However, she retained some sample garments for future revival. Consequently, this real-life inheritance battle concludes with the daughter boarding the last lifeboat before the Titanic's demise, with her brothers aiding her role. A particularly intriguing point is the exposure in court of a scandal involving Bahamian president in Las Vegas, astonishingly filmed by Peter himself. Moreover, it wasn't covertly filmed, but rather openly documented with the camera pointed directly at faces. The reason behind this audacity lies in Peter's excessive narcissism and desire to become a reality TV star, showcasing his miraculous rejuvenation to the world. Thus, year after year, he'd hire a photographer to chronicle his life, unwittingly providing the court with evidence. Faced with such a deranged and unscrupulous father and boss, notions of loyalty and filial piety dissolve, leaving only the collective condemnation of his action. Reflecting on Peter's life from A to 80, from penniless immigrant to industry tycoon, he traversed from one opportunity to another, surrounded by wealth and women, reaching the apex of success. However, as the dominoes fell, everything collapsed, ultimately defining his life with all of its ugliness. For most of us ordinary individuals, while we may lack Peter's wealth or wild experiences, perhaps therein lies our greater appreciation for life and reverence for its natural cycle, including accepting aging and mortality, fostering tranquility and inner peace. What are your thoughts on Peter and his pursuit of immortality?